Okay, folks, today is 6th March and it's Independence Day. And folks, trust me, I have to repeat a show I did once on Kwame Nkrumah. The legacy of the man called Kwame Nkrumah. Everything that we try to bury about the great man has just come out because truth crashed to earth shall rise again. Yes, this is a typical example of truth being crashed to earth, rising again. And I think I have to commend the administration and the president for changing the name to Accra International Airport.
That airport in Accra, the international airport, remains named Accra International Airport.
I'm so happy. I mean, I was one of those people that were saying we should call it Kwame Nkrumah International Airport, but more so, all I was saying was that the name of that great airport should not be that of a traitor. I'm glad we are back now with the Accra International Airport. Today, I want us to look back on a show that we did on Nkrumah, what he stood for and his legacies. And this is the best day to do a replay of that show. Hello. Well, welcome to this big day, March 6th. This is supposed to be Ghana's Independence Day. And folks, for this day, I want to spend some time on the great man. Actually, when you call Kwame Nkrumah a great man, you have underrated him. The man goes beyond a great man. But let me start my show, and then today we're going to look at what made Nkrumah so outstanding. But by the way, let's start the show. Welcome to TALKSHOP, where we tell it like it is and let the chips fall where they may. And as we always say, truth, crashed to earth, shall rise again. A typical one is Kwame Nkrumah. We'll get to that. See how we try to crash him, but he has risen even more than ever. And as I always ask you guys, what time is it? And as you always respond, it's nation time. So the folks today, you know, the last time I did an episode on Kwame Nkrumah, I was really astounded by the reaction. And especially the younger ones amongst you who are like so delighted to hear about Nkrumah. And some of you actually said you had no clue what Nkrumah stood for. And I don't blame you. I don't blame you, you know. There's been a lot of negative talk, a lot of backlashing trying to suppress the image of Kwame Nkrumah. But as I say, I feel she's still. Nkrumah is the numero uno. Yeah, he is the numero uno. Let me tell you something, folks. This is how I started. If you say Nkrumah was a great leader, it is a gross underestimation. Nkrumah was beyond a great leader. You know something, in every generation, sometimes in every millennium, a few people stand up and they stand tall as pillars of inspiration, as lights of hope. They stand tall. These people, they tower above all their peers. Nkrumah had no peer. Let me say this. There were many leaders who were around when Nkrumah was around, both in Ghana and Africa. But when I talk about a peer, in terms of those who could see what Nkrumah was seeing, those who understood what Nkrumah understood, those who had the brains to analyze the world politics and place Africa within the world politics, as Nkrumah could do, I don't know any. When you get a time, read his books. He wrote many books. I've read one book called Dark Days in Ghana. He wrote Dark Days in Ghana when the coup came and he was in Guinea when they overthrew Kwame Nkrumah. Do you know what happened? You know, he was not in Ghana when the coup happened. So he couldn't come to Ghana because there had been the coup. And then a friend of his, the president of Guinea, Sekou Touré, actually invited him. He says, hey, if Ghana doesn't like you, it's okay. Come to Guinea and be my co-president. That a country will invite a citizen of another country, a country whose president has been deposed in a coup. And President Secretary of Guinea said, Kwame Nkrumah, come and be here with me at Guinea and be my co-president so that you can educate me so that we can run this country as co-presidents. Nothing like this has happened ever in this world. So Nkrumah was in Guinea. They actually had it head on the Guinea currency and everything. But let's move on. Nkrumah had no peer, folks. Look, many of you, especially those of you in Ghana, there are many people who will disagree totally with me, and it's okay. Opinions are like noses, so you can have your opinion. But what I'm saying, folks, that there is historical fact and there is opinion. There are certain things, for example, a historical fact is that March 6, 1957 was Ghana's Independence Day. That is a historical fact. So you can't say, oh, Charlie, that's your opinion. It's not an opinion, it's a historical fact. And I think what is happening in Ghana now is that plenty people who cannot distinguish between facts and opinions decided to lambast Kwame Nkrumah because in their opinion, that is what they thought Nkrumah was. But if you look at the history, if you look at the facts, I say this here and I say it again and again, Nkrumah had no peer. Nkrumah was the kind of leader, they say a leader is the one who stands tall. A leader is the one who sees further than anyone. A leader is the one who sees beyond what the average eye sees. So for example, if Nkrumah is here and he's seeing the world at this height and you are here and he's saying, let's do it this way, and you are here challenging him, Massa, what he sees is not what you see. And you'll make that. And that is the story of Ghana and Nkrumah. I don't say this to annoy anyone as much as many will be annoyed. All those people who were fighting for independence with Kwame Nkrumah, they were not his peers. They didn't understand. You know, the first time I did this thing, you will study history. When you study history, you will learn about nationalism. Nationalism is the desire to fight for your nation and own your nation and build your nation. That is nationalism. And I said the first time I did this show on Nkrumah, I said in Ghana, there were two kinds of nationalism. There's what they call the proto-nationalism. Proto-nationalism. And there's what they call the mass nationalism. Now, what's the difference between the proto and the mass? The proto is when a group of people get together, like they had the original formation of the UGCC with the big shots and everything. And what they were fighting for, they were not fighting for independence of Ghana. They were sort of negotiating with the colonialists. Say, Charlie, we also need a seat on the Executive Council. We also need a seat on the Assembly. We also need a representation on the Assembly. That is proto-nationalism. And Nkrumah came in and transformed proto-nationalism to mass nationalism. Mass nationalism is not when you're looking for a seat or when you're looking for a say in the Executive Council. No. Mass nationalism is galvanizing all the people to stand behind you to fight for your nation. That is mass nationalism. So I'm telling you, when Nkrumah came to Ghana at the invitation of the UGCC, and many of them may agree with me, but I'm telling you for a fact, at the time, the level of operation of the UGCC was proto-nationalist. Nkrumah came and transformed the UGCC into a mass nationalist movement. And that is why it was easy for him to break away eventually. Because he was the one on the ground. He was the one organizing the people. And Nkrumah organized like there was no tomorrow. When he came, I think the UGCC had like 13 branches. Within like 6 months, he has increased to about 500 branches. Things like that. That was his energy. He was bullish. He moved. And so it changed from proto to mass. And it was through the nationalism that eventually we got independence. But that could be another show as to the steps we went through to get independence. How he capitalized on the agitation of the ex-servicemen. On the 28th of February, there was what we call the Christiansborg shootings, where the ex-servicemen of Ghana, those were the Ghanaian military people back in the day who had fought on the side of the British during the Second World War. They had fought and they had helped British win the war. When they came to Ghana, they were not paid their allowances and everything, so there was aggravation, and there was all of it culminated into this big march on 28 February, where 3 of them lost their lives. And that's another story. We'll talk about that later. But Nkrumah, being a mass nationalist, capitalized on this to move the country. When the shooting occurred, the next major thing that took place was, unfortunately, looting across the country. Ghanaians were pissed. They want their ex-service, they want their what we'll call ex-gratia now, and then you kill them, you kill 3 of them. So there was looting, and after that, Nkrumah called something positive action. But let's move on. I just want to give you an idea of what Nkrumah stood for. He didn't come to fight essentially, give me a place in the assembly to talk, or give me some, that was proto-nationalism. He says, no, we want independence, and we want it now. And at the same time, his cohorts who were with him and who were with the UGCC said, yes, we want independence, but we have to take our time. They actually sent a delegation to see the Queen, that don't give us independence. We are not ready. So give us independence at your earliest possible time. Decide when we should be independent. We are not ready. Don't mind Kwame Nkrumah. Nkrumah says we want independence now. There's a whole lot of history, and I want you guys to also research how when he got into jail, they put him in jail, and how he came up, and how he formed the CPP. And the CPP was strategic because he was the person who was known for the mass nationalist movement. And Nkrumah was known everywhere. His organizational tactics are bar none. He became the face of the nationalist movement. So when he decided to break away from the UGCC, he thought very hard. He says, right now, all Ghanaians know is convention. United goes to convention. They didn't know what to do. Ghanaians could not say all that. They just say convention, convention, convention. You know? So Nkrumah decided that, okay, let me break away from the UGCC. Let me start my own party and move for independence, but I'll call mine Convention People's Party. Just because the only word the Ghanaians knew when it came to freedom and fighting for freedom was convention. Ono, Nema, word near popular. So he formed the Convention People's Party, and he won so many elections, and he became the first prime minister. But let's move on beyond that. Nkrumah Banan. Look, that's why I started by saying that every now and then, every generation, or even perhaps a millennium, one person stands out, and he stands tall. And these people, when they stand out, what they do is that they suffer so that their people can prosper. They grow and they plant so that their people can reap the benefits. That was the nature of Kwame Nkrumah. He gave it all for Africa. He gave it all for Ghana. And folks, the reason why the BBC did a survey to find the Africans, the most prominent African for the millennium, do you know who won? Kwame Nkrumah. Look, there's this picture. It's a very interesting picture. And I got this picture from the US long ago. This is an artist's impression, okay? And in this picture, you can see all the big black leaders of the world. There's Harriet Tubman, there is Marcus Garvey, there is Paul Robeson, there's Martin Luther King, there is Frederick Douglass. These are names of amazing, active black people that were nationalists. But you see this picture that has been drawn? It includes all the people. There's Elijah Muhammad. But see who is sitting at the center of the table. I don't know, I'm sure many of you have seen the picture of Jesus Christ during the Last Supper, where he has all his disciples surrounding him, but he's seated at the center. That is exactly where they placed Kwame Nkrumah in this picture. And this picture was drawn by this historian, and this is the historian's impression of who Nkrumah is. Nkrumah goes beyond Ghana. Let me tell you why it was very important that the CIA overthrew Kwame Nkrumah. I said it in the last episode that I did. You see, Nkrumah published a book. It's called Neo-colonialism, the last age of imperialism. Let me tell you, when he released that book, the US State Department warned him. They were afraid of the book because its analysis of what the colonials were up to and how he explained how they were going to benefit from Africa astounded them. They said, this guy is dangerous. At the year that he published this, I think America was supposed to send Ghana some aid. That aid didn't come. And that is when they decided, like, this man is dangerous. Do you know why Kwame Nkrumah was dangerous? He wasn't dangerous because he had emerged as a great African leader. He has emerged as somebody who was trying to get African leaders to conscientize like him. The Jomo Kenyattas of his time, the Julius Nyerere of his time, the Modibo Keïtas. I'm talking about the leaders of his time. He was trying to get them to conscientize them. And the white folks panicked. The entire Western world panicked. They said, if this guy gets his chance, what he's going to do with Africa, he's going to block our chances of exploiting Africa the way we want to. So that's one thing. They were afraid of Nkrumah because of what they perceived, rightfully, that Nkrumah was going to do in Africa. Nkrumah was going to mobilize Africa. Nkrumah was talking about organization of African unity, you know? And at one point, he actually mentioned that, yeah, today we are talking about the Organization of African Unity. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about the United States of Africa. They panicked.
We must begin to build immediately our own continental common market. For it is easy for anyone who studies the common market organization closely to realize that the common market is aimed at harnessing the African countries to satisfy the profit lust of the imperialist bloc and to prevent us from following an independent neutralist policy. It is easy to see that the imperialists and the colonialists are determined to retain the African countries in the position of suppliers of cheap raw materials. If we do not resist this threat, and if we throw in our lot with the common market, we shall doom the economy of Africa to a state of perpetual subjection to the economy of Western Europe. This is another reason why we should come together in a unified African economic plan, which, operating on a continental scale, can make a solid attack on the imperialist domination in Africa. Being a unified Africa, and it should be possible in the higher reaches of our endeavor to devise a constitutional structure which will secure the objectives I have outlined, and yet preserve the sovereignty of each of the countries joining the Union. Africa is rich and not poor.
They panicked. And Nkrumah knew that that political union was not readily available, but it was just opening their minds. That's why I said in the beginning that there are some who sow seeds and others who come and reap the seed. He was just planting the seed. Talking about African Union and African unity and organization of today is the OAU, tomorrow is the United States of Africa. These were things Nkrumah was saying deep inside him. From where he's standing, he knew that that is where eventually Africa should be. And those leaders that were here, that were debating him and fighting him, they didn't know what he was talking about. So apart from the fact that he was going to galvanize Africa, what the Western world was afraid of was that he was going to galvanize all black people. You have to understand that at this time, racism was at its peak in the US. They were suppressing black people. Black people were being considered like second-class citizens. They called them niggers. At first they called black people niggers, and then after a while they became Negroes, and after a while the blacks were resisting, then they started calling them just blacks. And after a while it changed from blacks to African Americans, you know. But I'm saying that this time that Nkrumah was emerging, the racism in America was serious. They were suppressing black people. And the fear of America was that all these people who were trying to suppress would see Nkrumah as a leader who is trying to raise them all up. And that scared the living daylights out of them. Do you know two of the most prominent civil rights fighters in the US? One of them, you know, Martin Luther King, who gave that great speech, I have a dream. I have a dream. Martin Luther King, one of the most spectacular civil rights leaders in the world. He was in America. Guess what? Nkrumah was his mentor. He loved Kwame Nkrumah. Do you know the other great black freedom fighter? Malcolm X. You must have heard about Malcolm X. Malcolm X had a trip. He came to Ghana to have a meeting with Kwame Nkrumah.
One of the greatest revolutionaries to have ever lived. But did you know that Malcolm visited 6 African countries in 1964 and met with 7 African leaders? Yes, Malcolm met and had conversations with Kenya's Jomo Kenyatta, Uganda's Milton Obote, Nigeria's Nnamdi Azikiwe, Tanzania's Julius Nyerere, Egypt's Gamal Abdel Nasser, and Sekou Touré of Guinea. But guess which African leader Malcolm X was most honored to meet? That was Ghana's Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. In his autobiography, Malcolm says, "In Ghana or in all of Black Africa, my highest single honor was an audience at the castle with Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah."
Folks, I just want to draw your attention to the fact that Nkrumah was a magnet. And it wasn't just a magnet for Ghana, he was attracting the entire black race. W.E.B. Du Bois, he died here. Du Bois Center, go there, you see that his burial place is still there. You can see George Padmore. Name them. Nkrumah had created Ghana to become a haven for all black people that were struggling. I tell you, back in the day, most fighters and most nationalists that were fighting for freedom, everything in South Africa, most of them had Ghanaian passports. That is who Nkrumah was. And folks, let me say this. With all the backlash, Nkrumah is a dictator, Nkrumah is a killer, Nkrumah is a this. Even when he started the Young Pioneer, there was this whole gendarme that don't let your child go to the Young Pioneer because Nkrumah is brainwashing the children to say that there is no God. Nkrumah is this. The lies were plenty, the gendarme, from both local and foreign newspapers. Plenty. But I'm saying he kept his focus. Nkrumah, with all the gendarme against him, they say he was storing hots of gold bars. They say one impasse. Nkrumah was storing gold bars under his bed. Nkrumah had a goddess called Kankanyame. And Kankanyami also had a shrine. There was a shrine that Kankanyami was there. And Kankanyami had a barrel with a snake inside the barrel. And the snake had been killed around different walking sticks. So as the Jandam went back in Nkrumah, every morning he would go to this room to see Kankanyame, drink a pint of blood, and then take one of the walking sticks. Because Nkrumah was always walking with the walking stick. That was the Jandam behind the walking stick. Kankanyame the Demano. There were all these lies. But you know something fascinating? When they overthrew him, the lies and the money he has chopped and the money in his savings, they couldn't find one cedi in any Nkrumah's savings. Not one cedi. The man was so selfless. Everything he owned, he said it was for the state. The entire across the state there. They didn't find one cedi. Nkrumah didn't leave any mansion. Today you talk about your presidents and the people who point out mansions that they have built. Even if you are a presidential staffer today, you can own a BMW. You can own a whole, the presidential staffers even have apartment buildings. Presidential staffer. Nkrumah as president, one cedi not in his account. He built the Nyandiba estates. Nyandiba estates, that's what they call Nyandiba estates, because when he built it, he gave one of the houses he had built to his mother. His mother was living in Nkrumah. He brought the mother and gave him an estate. Do you know that when the coup came in 1966, they went and kicked that old woman out of the house? That is what they did. Nothing at all to date. There's no commission of inquiry. There's no investigation. Nothing implicated Kwame Nkrumah. Said he stole even a dime from Ghana. Compare his kind of leadership to the kinds of leadership that are coming now. You need your Benz, you need your V8, you need your this, you need to travel in private jets, you need to do this, you need to do that. He didn't even own a house. Forget about not owning a house. He saw that Ghana could become a great industrial country. He wanted to industrialize Ghana and make it the leading place in Ghana, in Africa. That's why he built the whole of Tema Township. The whole of Tema Township. He built the dry dock. He started the Black Star Line, the only shipping line in Africa at the time, with the ship fleets of about 16 to 18 ships. He wanted to industrialize this country. He was the brain behind the Akosombo Dam. Because he said if he's going to industrialize Ghana, then we need an energy source. We need power source. And because he built that power, he knew some arrangements he made. So VACO had to chip in to complete our Akosombo Dam so that VACO could come in and smelt our bauxite. I'm saying that the man, he thought, the man was Senegal. Ghana are then the leading exporter of cocoa. But Ghana had no way of determining what price we sell our cocoa. The white folks who are going to buy a cocoa will tell you, say, cocoa, this is how much we'll give it to you. Because Nkrumah said, is this because we have so much cocoa in abundance? And so, because we are not storing them and keeping them and regulating their flow in the market, that's why they're doing that to us. So he built the silos in Tema. He built several silos. And all he wanted to do was that all the cocoa beans were growing in Ghana will be stored in the silos. So that it won't be anything like, say, there's too much excess demand, so come and buy anything. No, he could control the demand and therefore control the price. He built the silos. At the time that he was building the motorway, when they built the motorway, after the coup, some of the charges that they made against Kwame Nkrumah for extravagant expenditure, included the motorway, or Sisika, DSC motorway. Wasn't it recently that Kofo came to expand the motorway and turned it to N1? That was the kind of campaign against Kwame Nkrumah. And to date, as I talk, there are people of my age and older who are still so steeped against Kwame Nkrumah that he was the most evil thing they can think of because of the gendarme against Kwame Nkrumah. But I'm telling you folks, Nkrumah he has no equal. He is far above any leader who were his contemporaries. And it was the most prominent black man. And the fear, can you imagine in America there's racism? They are oppressing black people back in those days. And then for them to read and hear about one leader in an African country who is emerging as a savior of the black people, do you know what that will do to the psyche of African Americans? Even to date, most African Americans who travel to Ghana is because they want to go to Kwame Nkrumah's country. They call him Nkrumah. Want to go to Nkrumah's country. It's good that the Ghana Tourist Board has now at least tried to upgrade the Nkrumah mausoleum, because there's no way any African American will come to this country and not go visit their mausoleum. Folks, all I'm saying is this. Nkrumah, you can't call him a great leader. What diminishing? He was a visionary. And what he saw for Ghana, have you been to the University of Science and Technology? The Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. All the secondary schools, I think he started called the Ghana Educational Trust. Name it. Name the school, it was part of the trust. The Ghana National College he built with the money from his own pocket, because some students have been fired and he says, no, I'll put you back in school. So he started the Ghana National College like that. Folks, Nkrumah he's larger than life. He's larger than life. And I think for me, and I said it at the time, the saddest part of all of this for me was that the airport was named after the people who took money from CIA to overthrow him. Kotoka. He has no place in the history of Ghana. He's a traitor. The National Liberation Council, that's what they call themselves, were nothing but traitors. They connived with the CIA to overthrow Kwame Nkrumah. And Ghanaians rejoiced because what he could see, we couldn't see. What he wanted, we didn't understand. We messed it up. But Charlie, we can't cry over spilled milk. And I don't believe in, what's the word, Paul? Stevie Wonder called it nicely. He said, spending all your life living in a pastime paradise. So we cannot continue to spend our time living in, oh, Nkrumah did this and Nkrumah did that, and the greatness of Nkrumah. We can't spend our lives living in that pastime paradise. He's gone. But I'm happy to say that, as I said at the beginning, he sows seeds that others may reap. And you watch. You see this young man, Ibrahim Traore of Burkina. You watch. These are seeds they are sown. And they're going to emerge gradually all over this continent. And you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised how Nkrumah will re-emerge in the lives of many Africans. And there's one guy that I'm still hoping to talk to soon. He's now 92, but his brains are so intact. And I'm looking forward for the opportunity to talk to him. I've sat down with him and he says I should give him a month because he suffered a stroke recently and he's now in recovery stage. This man was the only man that was with Kwame Nkrumah at the day when they overthrew him. He was sitting by Nkrumah. He was Nkrumah's cameraman and photographer. And I really, really, really look forward to reading him. And he says something. He says, when the coup happened, he talked to Kwame Nkrumah. He said, what is going on? They say the soldiers have taken over in Ghana, blah, 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 blah. And Nkrumah said, yes. It's called the coup. And he said, Nkrumah told him, you watch, it's going to be happening all across Africa. Coup here, coup there, coup here, coup there. Because the imperialists want to take over the continent again. But he said, Africa will look like it's been burnt to ashes because of coups and because of what the imperialists are doing, everything. But what he said that I was amazed. He says, like the phoenix, it will rise out of its ashes and become one strong, great continent. And okay, whether to happen today, in my lifetime, or in whatever lifetime, I don't know, but it will happen. That is Kwame Nkrumah. You know, so please, I know there are many people. The last time I did a show about Kwame Nkrumah, somebody wrote, some very, very intelligent person said, why am I talking about Kwame Nkrumah? Kwame Nkrumah was even the reason why we couldn't have a Ghana Airways, and that's why Ghana Airways collapsed, because he was just appointing his family. And I said, oh, Massa. Ghana Airways collapsed in 2002. Nkrumah died in 1972. So how did he arrange that? And he was overthrown in 1966. But he was the cause. You know, but this is the jandam. All the gold bars he said Nkrumah had. There's one guy, people in my age group and more will remember, he did a series of cartoons and he signed as Ganata. Ganata was uniquely the most jandam person that dominated Ghana since the coup. His cartoons were sold out, and he showed Nkrumah stealing gold. He showed Nkrumah actually having affairs. There was a cartoon series, when the Ganata, ask your parents, they will know. And those who are out there. Ganata damaged Kwame Nkrumah. He drew a cartoon of Nkrumah going to see Kankanyami and taking a walking stick. He damaged, and people were buying these books when Nkrumah was overthrown. We believe them. Hey, Nkrumah, hey, Nkrumah, Timo, folks. I was telling you the song was singing Sidi, Kwasiye Bitredaso, because he had a Zebeji on the CD. Sidi, Kwasiye Bitredaso. Things we did to Kwame Nkrumah, pulling down his statue there, it was just the smallest thing we did to him all. The name calling, the insults, the abuse, how we treated his family then, kicked them out of the Flagstaff house then, send them abroad, remove their mother from Nyandiba estates. We tortured Nkrumah. We burnt all his books. Campuses will hold bonfire sessions. The TUC, they all hold bonfire sessions. Yeah, she Nkrumah books. But still. I was listening to the recent economic forum that Mahama set up, and I think the name is K.Y. Amwakon. He was giving his keynote speak, opening thing, and the tribute he was paying to Kwame Nkrumah. I said,
as we've just said, Kwame Nkrumah embodied all these characteristics. We will do well to learn from his unparalleled record of leadership and vision as we face similar challenges today. On Nkrumah's leadership, Kwesi Botwe, of blessed memory, a friend and mentor to many of us in this room today, and one of our country's longest-serving finance ministers, once reflected that Nkrumah's imprint remains everywhere, in the macroeconomic and real sectors of Ghana's economy, in the banking and insurance industries, and in the country's basic infrastructure. Nkrumah believed in bold, transformative projects, and nothing exemplified this more than the Volta River project. It was the centerpiece of his strategy to industrialize Ghana's economy, providing the energy needed to boost factories, boost industry, and accelerate economic transformation. To me, Kwame Nkrumah was ahead of his time, and the inspiration he engendered and the vision he set forth were unmatched in African history.
Truth crushed to earth shall rise again. So Nkrumah will rise again. He is dead, and we will not continue to live in the pastime paradise. You know why? Because the seeds are growing. I feel like that you. Ibrahim tried to work out. You see how he's industrializing the country. So folks, I'm ending here. I just wanted to come back and revisit Nkrumah for us to understand the kind of person Nkrumah is and why the Western world was so afraid of him and why they did everything they could in their power to overthrow him, and not overthrow him, badmouth him, that you Africans, say, I think it's somewhere in the Bible, the prophet is never accepted in his own home. Kwame Nkrumah. Meanwhile, Guinea for to come and be our co-president. The whole world. I'm talking about all the blacks in the world. He is seen as the most eminent leader. And the seeds have germinated. And sooner than later, Nkrumah will prove, as they always say, Nkrumah never dies. Anyway, today is Independence Day. Mahama, I thank you that you are not celebrating this thing like a big bloated, like we have something to show for. I'm glad that it's a very sober thing. I'm hoping that eventually, let's scrap this. On Independence Day, we'll find a day to honor our teachers and our farmers or something, and forget all this profligate spending over nothing. But let me wish all of you here happy independence. Folks, that was it, man. And I'm so glad we had a chance to replay this. And I'm glad, again, that the name Kotoka has been dropped from the airport and is now Accra International Airport. Let us all join hands and keep building this nation that Nkrumah started to build long ago, so that we can now say that Ghana is rising again.